On January 18, 2026, 12 F-15E Strike Eagles from the 494th Expeditionary Fighter Squadron were screaming over the Mediterranean Sea towards the Middle East to tell Iran Trump means business. And this wasn't just any squadron. In April 2024, these same pilots destroyed over 80 Iranian drones in what the Air Force called the largest air-to-air enemy engagement in over 50 years. Now they're back to complement 24 other F-15s already in theater, all pointed right at Iran. And somewhere in Tehran, the regime just realized that no matter what drones they use, what aircraft they fly, or how hard they try to hide, nothing can stop what comes next when these F-15s get to work. To understand why Iran fears the F-15E's return, picture this scenario. At 0600 local time, somewhere over the Jordanian desert, an F-15E Strike Eagle is holding at 25,000 feet with a problem. 30 minutes ago, a forward operating base in Syria reported the launch. Satellite confirmation followed 10 minutes later. 12 Shahed 136 drones, bearing 047, heading southwest toward critical infrastructure in the Gulf. Clear skies, no weather interference, perfect conditions for radar tracking. An APG-82 radar should be painting them clear as day. It isn't. The Weapons Systems Officer, or WISO, sweeps the scope again, adjusting gain, cycling through frequencies. The radar was designed to track supersonic Russian fighters screaming toward the merge at Mach 2, targets that announce themselves with massive radar returns and aggressive closure rates. What he's looking for tonight is a fiberglass drone the size of a riding lawnmower, cruising at 3,000 feet and 100 miles per hour. The Shahed's radar cross-section is roughly equivalent to a large seagull. It flies slow enough that the Doppler filters, designed to screen out ground clutter, screens it out too. To the APG-82, the drone looks like a bird or a weather balloon, or nothing at all. Standard search mode, static. Pulse Doppler, more static. The drones are out there. They're getting closer, but the F-15 can't see them. That is until he tries something, not in any tech manual, that Iran didn't expect. He cycles to Ground Moving Target, or GMT mode. It's designed to find convoys on highways, not aircraft in flight. The algorithm highlights anything between 50 and 150 knots against the static terrain below. Trucks, tanks, technicals with machine guns mounted in the bed. The scope refreshes. 12 contacts materialize, bearing 047, 85 miles. What was invisible 3 seconds ago now has targeting solutions. The pilot rolls the aircraft toward the intercept heading while the WISO does the math. 12 targets, 4 AIM-120 AMRAAMs on the rails. Even with perfect shot doctrine, that's 8 drones getting through. 8 chances for one of them to find something worth hitting. He could fire everything and pray, but each AMRAAM costs $1.1 million each. Each Shahed cost Iran maybe $20,000. Trading $4 million in missiles for targets worth less than a college education isn't air defense, it's bankruptcy with extra steps. The Iranians figured this out years ago. Build 1,000 cheap drones, overwhelm the interceptors, make the math work against the defenders. It's not elegant, but it's effective. The F-15E orbiting today is one step ahead, equipped with something Iran didn't expect. Mounted on every available hardpoint are 7-shot rocket pods, 42 AGR-20 APKWS guided rockets total, which stands for Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System. Each one is a 70mm warhead with a laser seeker kit. Cost per round, only $30,000. The economics flip. The WISO slaves the sniper targeting pod to the lead contact. Infrared cuts through the haze, painting a heat signature against the cold desert snow. At 15 miles, the image dissolves. Delta wing, no cockpit, pusher propeller spinning at the rear. Textbook Shahed. He designates with the laser, a rocket motor ignites. The APKWS leaves the rail at 2,400 feet per second. Unlike an AMRAAM that needs radar tracking, the rocket follows reflected laser energy, homing in on the bright spot painted on the drone's fuselage. The seeker makes micro corrections, half a degree left, quarter degree down. Time of flight, 4.7 seconds. The Shahed doesn't know anything is coming. 1 minute it's cruising toward its program coordinates. The next, 2.3 kilograms of high explosive converts it into carbon fiber confetti. 41 rockets remaining, 11 drones still inbound. The second shot leaves the rail before the debris finishes falling. With AMRAAMs, each engagement requires lock-on, confirmation, careful shot doctrine. With laser-guided rockets, the WISO designates and fires every 3 seconds. The limiting factor isn't the weapon, it's how fast the targeting pod can slew. One F-15E can engage 14 targets per minute. Third Shaheed drops, then the fourth, the fifth. The WISO finds a rhythm, the pilot adjusting heading to keep the swarm in optimal engagement geometry. It's less of a dogfight and more of a turkey shoot. 12 rockets expended, 12 drones down, 400 miles short of their targets, scattered across the Iraqi desert in smoldering pieces. The pilot checks fuel state, 6 hours of loiter time remaining. The drone wave is finished. But 200 miles to the northeast, Iranian pilots are watching their radar screens, wondering if tonight is the night they get the order to scramble. They should hope that order never comes. Unfortunately for them, that order comes at 06:15 local time. 4 MiG-29 Fulcrums out of Mehrabad Air Base scrambling to intercept the American strike package pushing toward Iranian airspace. The pilots have trained for this moment their entire careers. They've studied American tactics, practiced against simulated F-15s, and memorized engagement profiles. None of that is going to help them now. 200 miles away, the APG-82 radar in the lead Strike Eagle paints the first contact before the MiG's wheels leave the runway. The WISO watches the diamond appear on his display. Bearing altitude, speed, heading, all updating 20 times per second. A second contact appears, then a third, then a fourth. The Iranian formation is still climbing through 10,000 feet when the F-15E achieves targeting solutions on all 4 aircraft. At this range, the MiGs can't see anything. Their pulse Doppler radars are searching empty sky, unable to pick the Strike Eagles out of the ground clutter below. The Iranian pilots are checking instruments, coordinating with ground control, forming up what they think will be an intercept. They have no idea they're already cooked. That's because the APG-82 is generations ahead of anything the Iranians field. It's an active electronically scanned array, or ASA, with thousands of individual transmitter modules steering radar energy electronically. The beam jumps from target to target in microseconds, tracking dozens of contacts simultaneously while the antenna never physically moves. Effective range against a fighter-sized target well over 100 miles. Against a MiG with a radar cross-section the size of a barn, that range extends considerably further. The lead MiG climbs through 15,000 feet, 62 miles from the Strike Eagle. Still no radar warning, still no indication that anything is wrong. The first AIM-120D leaves the rail. Fire and forget. The missile guides itself through inertial navigation, receiving periodic updates via data link from the APG-82. The Iranian pilot won't know it's coming until the AMRAAM's own seeker goes active in the terminal phase. That happens at 8 miles, 11 seconds from impact. The MiG's radar warning receiver finally screams. The pilot has 3 seconds to identify the threat, 2 seconds to process the information, 2 to select countermeasures, and 3 to execute an evasion profile against a missile going 4 times the speed of sound. He manages to pull about 3 Gs with 1 second to spare before the warhead detonates. The AMRAAM doesn't need a direct hit. Its blast fragmentation warhead sprays tungsten fragments in an expanding cone. The MiG-29 comes apart at 22,000 feet, cockpit, wings, and fuselage separating in different directions. The second AMRAAM is already tracking. 60 miles away, the wingman sees his flight lead disappear from the scope. No radio call, no distress beacon. Just there 1 second, gone the next. He has about 4 seconds to process this before his own radar warning receiver lights up. 4 seconds isn't enough time to do anything useful. The second MiG disintegrates at 24,000 feet, shredded by the same tungsten fragments that took out his flight lead. The third pilot, who, unlike his buddies, doesn't have the survival instinct of a sunfish, brakes hard left and dives for the deck. It doesn't matter. The APG-82 tracks him through the maneuver. The third AMRAAM adjusts its intercept point and follows him down. He makes it to 8,000 feet before the missile catches him. The fourth pilot does the only rational thing left. He turns around. Full afterburner, diving for Mehrabad, trying to put as much distance as possible between himself and whatever is taking out his squadron. The Strike Eagle tracks him all the way home. The Wizzo could take the shot. The geometry works. The missile would catch him somewhere over the suburbs of Tehran. He doesn't fire. The 4th MiG lands at Mehrabad still with a full weapons loadout and a pilot with an equally full flight suit. 3 aircraft destroyed. Total time elapsed 94 seconds. The F-15E still has 1 AMRAAM remaining. It still has full fuel. It hasn't deviated from its planned route by more than 15 degrees. This is what modern air combat looks like. Not dramatic dogfights with aircraft twisting through clouds. Silent detection at extreme range, followed by missile shots that arrive before the target even knows it's in danger. The era of guns and visual identification ended somewhere over Vietnam. What replaced it is industrial-scale elimination of aircraft by platforms they never see. Iranian commanders know this now. They've watched the radar tracks disappear. They've heard the silence on the radio frequencies. They understand exactly what happens when their aircraft attempt to intercept an American strike package. The rational response, the only response that preserves equipment and personnel, is to keep everything on the ground. And that's the real victory. The F-15Es don't have to shoot down every Iranian fighter. They just have to make it clear what happens to the ones that take off. Air dominance isn't about total amount of victories. It's about options. When your enemy decides that flying is akin to cashing out your life insurance policy, you own the sky without firing another shot. But air dominance isn't the final objective. It's what comes after that keeps Iranian generals shaking in their boots. 400 miles inside Iranian territory, buried under 40 feet of reinforced concrete, sits a facility that officially doesn't exist. Satellite imagery says otherwise. So do the thermal signatures seeping through ventilation shafts that someone forgot to properly mask. The F-15E Strike Eagle pushing toward Iranian airspace tonight carries what will blow the doors wide open on it. The pilot checks his fuel state, conformal tanks or CFTs 73%. Standard inertial, 81%. The numbers matter because the target sits 847 miles from the Jordanian border, far enough that a standard fighter configuration would flame out somewhere over western Iran, leaving the crew with the choice between ejecting into hostile territory or attempting history's least successful glide approach. The CFTs changed that math. 9,750 pounds of JP-8 bolted directly to the fuselage, adding range without sacrificing hardpoints. Combat radius, 1,200 miles. Every target in Iran is reachable, and the Strike Eagle will have fuel to spare for the return trip. Getting there is the real problem. Iranian air defenses took a beating in recent months. A 12-day war shredded their integrated network, cratered their command nodes, turned their pride into smoking debris. But shredded doesn't mean eliminated. S-300 batteries still guard the approaches to critical facilities. Bavar 373 systems fill gaps where the S-300s used to be. Tor M1 point defense units ring individual installations with overlapping engagement zones. Flying through that alone is still a tall ask. Flying through it with friends is a different story. 80 miles ahead, EA-18G Growlers are already working. Their ALQ-99 jamming pods flood Iranian radar frequencies with electronic noise, false returns, phantom aircraft, bearing data that points nowhere useful. S-300 operators watch their screens fill with ghosts. Somewhere in that static, real aircraft are approaching. The Iranians just can't tell which contacts are which. 60 miles ahead, F-16CJs orbit in holding patterns, arms on the rails, waiting for someone to make a mistake. Someone does. An S-300 battery commander gets nervous. He's watching his scope fill with jamming and he can't verify whether the threats are real. Standing orders say hold fire until positive identification. Survival instincts say light up the acquisition radar and figure out what's coming. Survival instincts are wrong. The moment his 30N6E2 fire control radar goes active, 3 different aircraft register the emission. The Growlers jam it. The F-16CJ, 40 miles west, launches a high-speed anti-radiation missile, or HARM. The F-15E's Eagle Passive Active Warning Survivability System logs the signal characteristics, triangulates the position, and adds to the threat map. The S-300 commander realizes his mistake about 15 seconds later when his radar warning receiver detects an incoming anti-radiation missile. He shuts down, but the HARM memorized his position the moment it launched. GPS doesn't care if the radar is transmitting anymore. The battery goes up in smoke at 0632 local time. The Strike Eagles push through the gap. 230 miles from the target, still well outside the range of any surviving surface-to-air system, the Wizzo brings up the weapons panel. 3 AGM-158 JASSMs, or Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile, rides the conformal tank stations. Cruise missiles with 1,000-pound warheads and enough range to hit the target without the F-15E ever crossing into the engagement envelope. The first JASSM accepts targeting data, GPS coordinates verified against satellite imagery. Aim point: the ventilation shaft on the north side of the facility, the one that thermal imaging suggests connects to something the Iranians would prefer to keep cool. The missile drops from the CFT station, falls for 2 seconds until its turbofan ignites, then accelerates away at 550 miles per hour. It will spend the next 30 minutes at treetop height, following terrain contours, invisible to radar, homing in on coordinates that haven't changed in 18 months. The F-15E turns 5 degrees left. There's a second target on tonight's list. The second JASSM launches 90 seconds later. The third. Each one vanishes into the sky, following different routes to different aim points, timing their arrivals to hit within seconds of each other. Fire and forget on a strategic scale. But standoff weapons only work against fixed targets with known coordinates. The facility that doesn't exist has been sitting in the same place for 3 years. The mobile launchers that Iranian Revolutionary Guard units have been shuffling around western Iran for the past 6 weeks are a different problem. That's why the Strike Eagle is still pushing east. The Sniper XR pod mounted under the fuselage can identify vehicle types from 40 miles away. Its infrared sensor cuts through darkness, dust, and Iranian attempts at camouflage. The Wizzo has been scanning since they crossed the border, looking for the thermal signatures that indicate a SAM battery trying to hide under a highway overpass or a radar unit pretending to be a cargo truck. At 0641, he finds something. 3 vehicles in a wadi, covered with camouflage netting that blocks visible light but does nothing against infrared. The thermal bloom is consistent with a Bavar 373 battery, radar unit, command vehicle, and a TEL with missiles still on the rails. Mobile, relocatable, exactly the kind of target that JASSMs can't hit because it won't be there when the missile arrives. The GBU-31 JDAM doesn't have that problem. The pilot rolls the aircraft, bringing the target pod to bear. The Wizzo refines the aim point, not the vehicle themselves, but the narrow mouth of the wadi where they're hiding. Terrain multiplies the blast effect. 1 bomb does the work of 3. Release solution goes valid. 4 GBU-31s on the rails, 2,000 pounds each. The first JDAM falls free. For 34 seconds, it's just a bomb falling through darkness. GPS receivers talk to satellites. Guidance fins make micro-corrections. The weapon doesn't know or care what it's about to hit. It only knows the coordinates it's been given. The impact registers on seismographs across the region. The wadi collapses. Secondary explosions confirm the targeting. Missile propellant cooking off, fuel cells rupturing, ammunition sympathetically detonating. The thermal signature on the sniper pod blooms white, then slowly fades as the fires settle. 1 Bavar 373 battery gone. The second JDAM is already tracking toward coordinates 20 miles east, where another set of thermal signatures suggested another battery trying to hide. The third and fourth follow in sequence, each one erasing something the Iranians spent years acquiring and months trying to conceal. 5,000 pounds of American foreign policy, distributed across 4 aim points, doing in 90 seconds what sanctions and diplomacy couldn't accomplish in a decade. The F-15E turns for home. Behind it, the first JASSMs are reaching their terminal phase. The facility that doesn't exist is about to have a very bad morning. The missiles pop up from terrain masking altitude, acquire their aim points, and dive. 3 impacts. 3 ventilation shafts that no longer ventilate anything. Whatever was underneath that concrete is now underneath rubble, burning, flooding, or all 3. The Strike Eagle crosses back into Iraqi airspace. Conformal tanks still show 31%. More than enough. The Growlers peel off toward their tanker track. The F-16CJs head for the barn. Overhead, F-35s continue their silent watch, hungry for any Iranian fighter brave enough to pursue. None are. The Strike Eagle doesn't need stealth. It doesn't need to be the fastest or most maneuverable aircraft in the inventory. It needs to carry heavy ordnance a long way, find targets that don't want to be found, and put warheads on foreheads from distances that make air defense networks irrelevant. That's what it does better than anything else flying. And right now, 12 more of them are sitting on runways in Jordan, locked, loaded, and pointed east. Bye for now.